So even according to the Bible, it certainly wasn't thousands of people that saw Jesus die and rise from the dead.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and Christians should not overstate the case.
The Bible says that it was about 500, maybe a little more. And Christians will say this as though it's some kind of convincing argument. 500 people witnessed Jesus rise from the dead. You can't discredit that.
I think you could be reasonably agnostic about it if all you're going off of is 1 Corinthians 15. The account doesn't say what the appearance was like. It only says that they believed that they saw Jesus. Maybe they thought they saw Jesus from a distance. Maybe they were caught up in some sort of mass religious ecstasy. I'm a Christian, and I don't think 1 Corinthians 15 gives us really strong evidence for the resurrection, just strong evidence that the early Christians believed in the resurrection. So why do you think it should be discredited?
Well, yeah, I can if we can't even talk to those 500 people.
Oh, there are no time machines. We need to examine the details of their testimony and look for signs of truth, just like we do with any other ancient historical document.
If the resurrection happened 2,000 years ago, and all that we have to show for it are some copies of ancient texts that we no longer have originals of. We don't even know what the original texts said. We have no way of knowing if the copies that were made of the original texts were altered and changed.
Oh, man. There's so many problems here. Where do I even begin? I think I'm going to quote my friend Kyle Hewitt here. Suppose the skeptic is correct, and the New Testament accounts are not really the accounts of the first Christians. It would surprise us then if the New Testament accounts contain references to things that someone would only know if they were really from the time and place that the author said they were from. If the New Testament accounts were corrupted and changed over time, it would also be surprising for the accounts to have been recognized and quoted by the earliest Christians from all over the world, and it would be even more surprising for the references and quotations to line up with the documents as we have them today. It would also be even more surprising to find very early non-Christians quoting and citing the documents we have today as the official Christian accounts if they did not actually represent what the first Christians believed.
Maybe it was only 100 people. Maybe it was 10 people. Maybe it was 0 people.
Most skeptical scholars don't doubt the resurrection because we don't have accurate manuscripts. They doubt the resurrection out of the grounds, like alleged contradictions found in the text, or absurdities, or maybe historical errors, or often just philosophical bias against the idea of miracles. If you're going to argue against the resurrection, it would be better to just argue against the texts themselves, which is a conversation that I definitely would invite.
Bring it!
Besides, 2 of the gospel accounts aren't even eyewitness accounts.
But 2 are, and now we're talking about the gospels. Good. Like Paul's statement in 1 Corinthians 15, the Gospels do give us details about what the resurrection appearances were like. They said different groups had long conversations with Jesus, ate with Jesus, touched Jesus, and saw him over a period of 40 days. These aren't the kind of appearances that someone could be easily mistaken about if the resurrection stories represent what the original eyewitnesses actually claimed. To be fair to Christie, she says that none of them are eyewitness accounts, but what does the early church say? They're unanimous in attributing them to the apostles Matthew and John. They quote them early and copiously as if they're authoritative, and the attestation of authorship is not only significant and early, but it's geographically diverse, coming from every quarter of the Roman Empire. And in John's Gospel, he specifically claims to be an eyewitness. He also states his commitment to factual truth. We can't just set this kind of evidence aside.
Luke even admits that his account is not eyewitness, but that these are stories that were passed to him that he wrote down.
Oh, talk about mangling Luke's words.
Look how they mess with my boy.
Luke doesn't say that he stitched together a bunch of telephone game stories. Here's what Luke actually said. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things that you have been taught. Carefully investigated what was handed down by eyewitnesses. Again, this is a stated commitment to factual truth, and Luke would have been in position to know what he's talking about. There is ample evidence that Luke was a traveling companion of Paul's, as I discussed in several videos on my channel. Luke claims to have been present with Paul during Paul's visit to the Jerusalem church in Acts 21. Luke was also with Paul during his imprisonment in Caesarea Maritima for at least a couple of years, during which time he would have had access to many living witnesses to Jesus' resurrection, since Caesarea is only 75 miles away from Jerusalem. Luke's acquaintance with the Jerusalem apostles puts him in a position to know what was being proclaimed concerning the nature and variety of of the post-resurrection encounters with Jesus. And Luke's demonstrated care and meticulousness as a historian also provides some reason to think that Luke is sincerely representing what he believes the apostles experienced. Again, I outline Luke's care as a historian in several videos, which you can find on my channel, or you can read the historian Colin Hemmer's book, The Book of Acts in the Setting of Hellenistic History, if you don't want to take my word for it. Oh, and by the way, the early church is unanimous in their testimony that Mark was Peter's interpreter and companion. New Testament scholar Richard Bauckham provides several lines of evidence that Mark's gospel represents Peter's perspective.
So when Christians say that 500 people witnessed the death of Jesus and you can't make that up, yeah, you can. And I think they did.
Yeah, I bet they didn't.